The 7-point minimum scenarios for the 2013 election regarding specifically the tyranny of numbers. Now, when we did the scenarios, we assumed three things. Number one, we do not see things as they are. We see them as we are, quoted from a thinker. Number two, assumption that we have all made up our minds. We do not want to be confused by the facts, and these are the two assumptions that are likely to power this election. So what are the facts? We divide the facts into two. There are those facts that we call historical, and there are those facts that we call factual, as they are released, or they were released by IBC. Fact number one, we vote as tribes. Or has this changed? I doubt it. If we vote as tribes, then assumption is that we will vote as a tribe in this election, or as tribes in this election. Fact number two, this election was already concluded and won on December 18th, 2012, after the registration. Well, as some people are sleeping through the revolution during the registration, others were scheming. The facts that are numerical, we look at the raw ethnic numbers by IBC. You can see here the Yama vote is 4.3 million. The Kalenjin vote is 1.8 million. If indeed we're going to vote as ethnic groups, the ethnic alliance of both Gema and the Kalenjin then has 6.1 or 6.2 million votes. The coalition that brings together CORD as the Luo is 1.676 million, and 80% of the Kamba voted 1 million. And Turkana, for good measure, we threw them into CORD as well. We could have thrown anybody, but for good measure, just to pump up the figures. And that gives you 2.8 million votes for CORD, if we are to vote ethnically. Now, this is how we broke up the numbers. Within Jubilee, the Kikuyus are there. You can see that 3.4 million. The Kikuyus registered with annoyance. Kiambu alone, for instance, has close to 1 million votes. The Kalenjin there give you 1.8 million. And then, of course, the Embu and the Mero give you 866 million votes. If you all vote as a block, this is what gives us 1.2 million votes. The Luos there are at 1.56 million, or close to 1.6 million. Then you add the 80% Kamba vote, which is 1.3 or thereabouts, including the Turkanas, and the total is 2.8 million votes. And then, of course, Amani. And here we assume that all the Luyas will go with Mudavadi, but we could be so fundamentally wrong with that. And if you take all the Luya votes and you added them all to CORD, you still get about 4.6 million votes, which is still almost 1.5 million away from what Jubilee starts with. The other 36 communities of Kenya, which are also being known as the swing votes, then are at 3.4 million. This is basically the ethnic breakdown, if ethnicity is a reference point in this election. Now, is it possible for any of the coalitions to hit the first round victory, as they've been telling us they'll do it in 90 minutes? Let us examine the facts as they are. What is a 50 plus 1% cutoff? And it is at 7.17 million votes, and this is if we vote 100% voter turnout. But then number two, what is the ethnic starting point for each of the coalitions? As we have already submitted, Jubilee has 6.2 million. CORD begins with 2.8 million in terms of its ethnic stronghold, while Zamani's ethnic stronghold is 1.8 million. So as you can see, no coalition is starting from the cutoff point of 7.1 million votes. But then we also ask the question, which coalition is closest to the cutoff point? What is the level of effort to be applied by each coalition to get to this particular cutoff? Let us look at the statistics and see what they tell us. So we begin with Jubilee. What's the Jubilee starting point? Jubilee starting point is 6.18 or 6.2 million, which is shy by about 900,000 votes from the cutoff. CORD starting point is 2.8 million. Amani starting point is 1.78 million votes. But what does this mean? If indeed voting is a solid historical reference point, then Jubilee ethnic support or ethnic base is 2.5 times that of CORD. What this essentially means is that every Luo and Kamba voter who is supporting CORD must vote twice to get to where Jubilee is. It means that they have to illegally go and vote in the morning and vote in the evening without fail for them to be able to get where the Jubilee is. But even then, that is a tall order. But as we have also mentioned, if the Luhya nation abandoned Amani and voted for CORD overwhelmingly the last month, this only adds up to 4.6 million votes as a starting point against Jubilee's 6.2 million votes. This is what we are calling the tyranny of numbers, and so we are saying the election was already won by December 18th when we finished registering. But regarding the level of effort, we must ask the question, how many votes does each of the coalitions require to reach the 50 plus 1%? The Jubilee starting point is 6.2 million, as you can see. The CORD starting point is 2.8 million. The Amani starting point is 1.8 million. But what is the Jubilee level of effort? Jubilee level of effort is 980,000. That's all they require to hit the mark of 7.1 million and win the election round one. But what does CORD require to win the election round one? CORD requires 4.3 million votes according to IEBC, the IEBC register, and the way we have simulated it ethnically. And how about Amani? What does Amani require? It requires 5.27 million votes to reach that particular point. But what does all this mean? How do we analyze this? Analysis of this is very simple, that for every one vote, Jubilee has to mobilize to reach 50 plus 1%. CORD has to mobilize 4 votes. And the level of effort, therefore, and the ratio of the level of effort is 1 to 4. That is 1 for Jubilee, 4 for CORD. And this means, therefore, that CORD has to work 4 times harder and spend 4 times more, even spend 4 times more sleepless nights. As the Jubilee fellows are spending only 1 night for them to be able to even out. So for every 1 vote persuaded by Jubilee, CORD has to lose 4. And for every 4 votes persuaded by CORD, Jubilee will lose 1. That is in pursuit of the 50 plus 1% cutoff. So the question is, who will get there? This is what we are calling the tyranny of numbers. What about the swing vote? Where will it go? I want to assume that we add it all to CORD. We assume that all the remaining 36 communities will caranoid and vote for CORD. Where will that take CORD? As you can see, the Jubilee support is there, 6.2 million. So you take the Luo support, you add the Kamba support, and then you take all the 36, the entire 36 communities added together. You add them all together, and you ask, so where does that leave CORD? It takes them to 6.2 million votes. And as you can see, not very far away from where Jubilee basically is. And Amani, as you can see, is down there. Even if you take the entire 36 communities, also known as a swing vote, and you give them to Amani, will they reach the 50 plus 1%? I doubt it. But if you were to take all the 36 and you give them to Jubilee, I think the results are obvious right there. So what is a coalition of the 38 tribes? Would the 38 tribes then make a difference if the Luos and Kamba are joined by all the 36? Would they reach that particular point? As I have said before, it is difficult. So our conclusion here is really that the tyranny of numbers, or the entire country, is going to be terrorized through these particular numbers by only 2 or so communities, as it were. Regarding the runoff, are there surprises that we are likely to see? I think the first fact is that the runoff will most likely be between Jubilee and CORD. That is if it happens. The second fact is that this runoff presupposes a voter turnout that is similar across board. That is, everybody, all the coalitions will have a similar runoff rate, will have a similar turnoff rate. 50% turnoff, 50% turnout for everybody, or 100% turnout for everybody across board. That's amongst the coalitions. But if the swing vote is distributed equally amongst the coalitions, but voter turnout is low for CORD, then Raila will become number 3. And the trouble in our view is that the people who will compromise the Raila candidature are the Kamba, if they are not completely persuaded, because they can be swayed in any particular direction. And this is how, in our thinking, of simple simulation, we assume that Jubilee turnout is 50% and CORD turnout is 50%. And then Amani turnout happens to be 70%. You see, in a situation, a scenario like that, definitely the runoff will be between Jubilee, that is Uhuru Kenyatta, and CORD, and Amani. We offer some unsolicited recommendations. Recommendation number 1, completely unsolicited. Raila's strategy should be to stop Jubilee from winning first round. If he does not stop them from winning first round, he will not have the second chance of doing a runoff. Similarly, he must stop Amani from kicking CORD to that position ahead of the runoff. I think these two realities are things Raila cannot ignore. Second recommendation, totally unsolicited, is that ICC trials should be deferred until the 2 suspects are declared winners. And with these scenarios, our thinking is that they ain't showing up at The Hague. They will not go. They will stay here in Kenya. They will refuse to go on the 10th and on the 11th if it is clear that they are winning. Whether we have a runoff or no runoff, whether they win first round, they will not show up. So the best case for purposes of preserving the country is to ensure that those trials are deferred. Then number 3, those threatening sanctions, especially the Western nations, should start preparing the package. And they should do so seriously. They need to move from rhetoric to action. And this is because a tiger does not declare its integrity, it pounces. And if you don't pounce, as they have been threatening to pounce, the tyranny of numbers will have absolutely no mercy. Everything said in this clip is hypothetical. It must also be noted.